But this isn't the real issue, right? Because the real issue is, can Ryan Poles draft defense? Can he show us that he can build a defensive line? Because they went out and finally shored up that offensive line this last year, which we all had questions about. Can he do that on the other side of the ball? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Chicago Man I Am. And today we've got a treat. I wanted to take a step back and really look at Ryan Poles as a GM and what we should feel heading into this draft, an important draft. Building off of the season that we had last year, you heard the term house money. That's what we were playing with. No one expected us to beat the Packers in the playoffs, let alone win the division, right? And we need to hammer the defensive side of the ball. That raises concerns. That raises questions because some people are nervous about Ryan Poles or are nervous about whether or not he can get it done in a draft. He's made some questionable decisions in the past. He's also made some great decisions recently. What is the truth about Ryan Poles? How should we feel? Should Bears fans be nervous heading into the draft? Let's take a look. I have gone through and graded all of Ryan Poles' draft picks since he has been GM for the Chicago Bears. And this is the scale that I have graded on. Now, if you take a look at this, this is my own made-up scoring system, right? I am essentially going to be giving away points for every draft pick depending on how that player panned out, right? They get 0 points. Ryan Poles gets 0 points if it's a whiff. If it's a player that has not snuffed any sort of significant playing time, I'll give him 1 point if it's a decent pick. If it's somebody who has contributed at a healthy level or at least been involved in the team building or at least been involved in the team. Not the bare minimum of contributions, but significant, right? I'll give him 2 points. If this is a player that should earn a second contract, whether it's with that team or with another team, it's a good player, right? 3 points if it's a top player, one of the better players in the league, and 4 points if it is a superstar. Obviously, more points weighted for superstars, finding those players. And then a bonus scoring. I will give 4 points if you uncover a late round gem, right? Somebody in rounds 5, 6, or 7 who turns out to be a hit, a significant contributor. This could be a starter. This could be somebody who might as well be starting, or a backfield split, or a tight end in 12 personnel. You've got 2 tight ends and you've got one of them that's maybe not the starter, but is contributing like a starter. And for your viewing pleasure, I have decided to compare Ryan Poles against Brett Veach of the Kansas City Chiefs, against Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles, against John Lynch of the San Francisco 49ers. So how does Ryan Poles stack up against these guys? I think it's going to be something that you are not expecting. So let's just walk through how I've graded the Chicago Bears, okay? Let's start in years 2022. Kyler Gordon, top player. I think when he's healthy, he's one of the best players in the league, at least at that position. The keyword, when he's healthy, but he gets a 3. Brisker was a decent player, but he was banged up. He was injured. We didn't give him a second contract, and for that reason, we moved on from him. I would like to say that this is a 2, but I'm really going to give it a 1 because we didn't re-sign him, and his play has been up and down. Velus Jones, absolute whiff. Braxton Jones, we drafted a starting level left tackle in round 5. I think that's a win, and that's a good pick by Ryan Poles. Even though his ceiling isn't as high, you draft a guy in round 5 and he's starting at left tackle for you and is at least serviceable, at least average. Good job. Dom Robinson. I think that, his career with the Bears is up and down. He certainly had moments where he flashed, but he was also injured. Decent. 1. Zach Thomas, Tristan Ebner, Doug Kramer, Jatari Carter, all whiffs. Nothing to be heard of from these guys. And then Elijah Hicks. This guy is he's been re-signed by the Chicago Bears. He's a big special teams contributor. He also, is a depth player. We get 4 points for finding a guy in the 7th round that we're re-signing to a second deal. And then Trenton Gill whiff. Moving on to 2023. Darnell Wright. People criticized it, compared against Jalen Carter because Jalen Carter won a Super Bowl and splashed early. But I think that Ryan Poles is actually coming out on top here. 4 points. Darnell Wright is one of the best right tackles in the NFL. All pro. 4 points. Javon Dexter remains to be seen. I'm giving him a 1, decent. Tyreek Stevenson, a 1, decent. His play is up and down, right? It's a big year for him. It's a big year for them both, contract years, but as of right now, I'm giving them 1s, just to be fair. Pickens, Roshan Johnson, Tyler Scott, absolute whiffs on all 3 of them, 0 points. Noah Sewell, I feel bad for him. I felt like he was finally getting some momentum and building this year and playing at a good level, and then he gets injured. It's the story of his life, right? A 1 for Noah Sewell. It could be a bust depending on how you look at it, but I think that his contributions this year at least tell me he's a decent enough player. And then Terrell Smith, I think going into this season, before he got injured, it's his second year, and he was competing to be that, cornerback 2. It's a bummer that he got injured, but I do think he's a hit. I'm excited to see him this year. We drafted him in the 5th round. That's a good pick. 4 points. Travis Bell, Kendall Williamson, whiffs, 0. Caleb Williams, obviously going to be a superstar on his way, 4 points. Rome Odunze, I put him as second contract guy. He's a 2 right now. I think he could easily be a blue, right? A top player, but it's just hard. It's hard because it's all projection. He got injured this year. He certainly has the tools. Big year for Rome Odunze. We've got to see it, but right now he's getting a 2. Ron Amagaji, whiff, 0. One of the dumbest picks of Ryan Poles' tenure. Torrey Taylor, talk about dumb picks, 2 in a row. I mean, this is in the 4th round. We took a punter. We could have taken anything else. It would have been awesome if Torrey is clearing away the best punter in the league, but he's not even that. And Some of these punters you can get undrafted or at least, round 7. You don't need to waste a 4th-round pick on a punter. It was a dumb pick, but I think he's a good punter. He's decent, so I'll give him a 1. Austin Booker, this is one of Poles' best picks. In round 5 to get Austin Booker, who was starting at the end of last season and probably would have been starting the whole season, arguably, if he didn't get injured. But Austin Booker, I think rolling into this season, people are high on him, and I think he's going to be the starter. And I think we're waiting to see if he's going to be a 10-sack guy, right? Can we get him 10-plus sacks? This is a big year for him. But so far, he's a hit in round 5, 4 points for that. Colston Loveland, I think clear and away, is going to be a superstar. He's already, top 5 tight ends in the NFL. Based on projection, you might even say top 3. I think it's clearly obvious that this guy is going to be top tight end in the NFL, or at least top 2. Very good. The makings are there. And Luther Burden, I mean, look, this is a projection, and this might be, a little bit of Chicago bias, but I'm giving him a 3 as a top player. You can see the flashes. You can see that this guy was just starving for more opportunities, more targets, more catches, more opportunities to get the ball in his hands, right? He was just chomping at the bit. And I think this guy, after this year, we might even be putting him in this gold category, right? With the superstars. He might be that level. And I think I'm being, a little bit eager here saying top player already, but I think it's obvious that he will be. He's going to have more responsibility, more pressure, more on his plate this year. We'll see how it goes. Ozzie, I wish he didn't get injured. Shamar, I wish he didn't get injured. Both of them, I think, flashed, or I think both of them at least showed that they're going to be capable contributors to our team. I'm putting them as decent right now. We're not going to know, really anything about Ozzie for another year. And Shamar, hopefully he's back next year contributing. He might even be a second contract guy. We'll see. But Ruben, I'm putting him as an absolute whiff right now. It was a questionable pick as is, but then he got injured and we never really had an opportunity to evaluate him. So he's really done nothing that can give me any reason to not have him as a whiff. Zay Frazier didn't even play the whole year. We drafted him. He didn't even play the whole year. I am high on him. I think there's something there, and Al Harris clearly likes him. We'll see. He probably won't be a 0 after this season, but we drafted a guy who, didn't play at all this year. And Luke Newman, I'm giving a 0 as a bust. Not that he's a bust. He certainly played. And after this year, who knows, maybe he's a developmental center. Maybe he's a developmental guard. After this last year, he didn't really contribute all that much to where I could say that he's anything. So I give him a 0 just to be fair, just to remove my Chicago bias, right? And then Kyle Munga, I think, is a home run. We drafted a potentially starting caliber running back in the 7th round, and he turned out to be an absolute animal, everything we needed. So looking at all of this, on the grading system, I walked through every player. I walked through, their grades and why I gave them. You could, nitpick if you want, but the grade that I got for Ryan Poles as a GM, 1.35. 1.35 average points per draft pick. That doesn't mean anything to you yet, right? I understand that because you have nothing to compare it to. Well, why don't we compare it against the Eagles with Howie Roseman and how he's done? People view him as the be all end all, right? They view him as one of the best GMs in the NFL. He's won a Super Bowl. He's acquired talent. He's aggressive. People like Howie Roseman. He has a 1.12 grade. Now, obviously, this 2025 draft for him is complete dog shit. Awful draft for him. But then he gets credit for Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, some of these guys. But then they've also had some guys walk, like a Nakobe Dean. Jordan Davis just got an extension. So I think that Howie Roseman, a 1.12 is probably pretty good. And it would be interesting to compare this against the whole league. But if you compare it against the San Francisco 49ers, where are they at? Not good. Based on the same scoring grade that I gave the Bears and I gave the Eagles, the 49ers are a 0.56. per draft pick. Awful draft this last year. They've really drafted no superstars at all recently. I know they've got, George Kittle, they've got Nick Bosa, they had Deebo Samuel, they hit on some of those guys. I did this only from the years 2022 up until now, just so we can compare apples versus apples with Ryan Poles and in the relative years, right? They did hit on Brock Purdy and they hit on Tatum Bethune, so they get points there. But then when you compare it against the Chiefs, what did the Chiefs get? They're actually closer to a 1. They're 0.96, right? So of all these teams, I'm seeing, the Chiefs and the Eagles are fairly close, but if you compare them all, check this out. This should help us feel a little bit better about our GM heading into this draft, comparing against the Eagles, Chiefs, 49ers, Howie Roseman, Brett Veach, John Lynch. Ryan Poles grades out as the best drafter of the 4 since 2022. Very impressive. I did not expect to get this. I did not expect to come to this sort of conclusion. I was just digging through, not knowing what the end result would be, and this is shocking me like I'm sure it's shocking you. So Ryan Poles, when it comes to drafting, although he's missed and although he's hit, it's really not that bad. We compare it to every GM hits, every GM misses. They all have duds of draft picks. They all have, diamonds in the rough that they uncover. They all have potential superstars that they find, right? But the thing that I like about Ryan Poles is that check out the 49ers. Look, Drake Jackson, this guy's a bust and he's your 2nd round pick. Jake Moody, you took a kicker in the 3rd round. He's not even on your team anymore. Bust. Mykel Williams, before he got injured this year, wasn't playing that great. Who knows? He could potentially develop and be better, and I'm not going to judge him already, but even Alfred Collins, your 2nd round pick, barely contributed this year. That's where I like what Ryan Poles has done, right? In his first round picks and his second round picks, he's not normally whiffing on those, right? He's hitting on Kyler Gordon. He, for the most part, hit on Brisker. If Brisker didn't have injury issues, he nailed Darnell Wright, and then he got 2 starters in Javon Dexter and Tyreek Stevenson in the second round. Then he hit on Caleb. Then he hit on Rome. Then he hit on Colston. Then he hit on Luther. Then he hit on Ozzie. Then he maybe hit on Shamar. We'll see. So it's just early on, Ryan Poles does a very good job, and he's also done a very good job somehow uncovering late round picks. I think that this last draft has a lot to do with Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson should get a lot of the credit there, but this isn't the real issue, right? Because the real issue is, can Ryan Poles draft defense? Can he show us that he can build a defensive line? Because they went out and finally shored up that offensive line this last year, which we all had questions about. Can he do that on the other side of the ball? Well, let's compare the offense against the defense. Now, if we're looking at these draft picks and we remove offensive players or special teamers, we only look at defensive picks. Ryan Poles actually has a higher grade, 1.35 with every draft pick, all of them considered, 1.4 when it comes to defense. Now, that's why, because you get some of these whiffs like a Zach Thomas, a Ebner, a Kramer, a Jatari Carter, a Villas Jones, like some of these, a Tyler Scott, a Roshan Johnson, those all come out to bite Ryan Poles. But on the defensive side of the ball, he's actually been quite decent. Now, defensive line is where I think that we could all, there's concerns there, but we've hit Austin Booker so far. We might hit Shamar Turner. I'm not so sure that we're going to re-sign Javon Dexter or Tyreek Stevenson. We'll see. They're both in contract years, so who knows? They might have the best years of their career. But I only share that to essentially say, going into this draft, I think that Ryan Poles deserves some of our trust. I think that, especially with Ben Johnson, he's shown to make pretty good moves, pretty solid moves that have set us up and put us in really good positions. We haven't necessarily had a draft under Ryan Poles where we have been a solid team and we are building off of the back of a successful season where we just need to dump all of our resources and all of our picks and all of our evaluations into that defense, which clearly we need to do this year. Can Ryan Poles do it? Can he find us another Kyler Gordon? Can he find us an impact defensive lineman? We need a safety. Can we hit on the safety? We're going in naked. We're going into the draft with only one starting safety, and we've got to find a starter at safety, not just a good player, not just a contributor. We need to find a starter, which is a tall task. Can Ryan Poles get that job done? I actually have a little bit more grace and understanding and patience when it comes to Ryan Poles. Some of us have complained about, the Chase Claypool thing, right? That's something that's been held against him. I've always looked at it as, in hindsight, it was awful. Chase Claypool is a dumpster fire of a player, a nightmare of a player. But I understand the logic and why Ryan Poles did that, because you had to give Justin Fields something to evaluate him with. He couldn't just have no receivers, no weapons. You had to try to give him as many weapons as you could so that you could give a fair and thorough evaluation, so that you could stand on your 10 toes when you move off of him and draft Caleb Williams, right? You could have comfort. You could have reassurance knowing that you gave your best effort to try to give Justin Fields some help, even though turns out Chase Claypool was no help. He was a hindrance, but you get what I'm saying. I like Ryan Poles' demeanor. I like his partnership. He seems to be, on the same page with Ben Johnson. He seems to be very, thought out and composed. He's not overly aggressive, which sometimes we want him to be a little bit more aggressive, but I also respect the fact that he's not willing to sell the farm and sell our future, mortgage our future to trade for maybe somebody that might be a little bit short-sighted. Now, it's a balance, right? There's a fine line between over-aggressive and under-aggressive. We want to find that balance. I think he's proven to find that balance. He's, made the trades. How long are we going to talk about the Carolina trade that we're still reaping the benefits from? I'm excited, and I'm actually curious, because I think as much as we want to try to predict and try to expect and anticipate what Ben Johnson and what Ryan Poles are going to do in this draft, I think that last year proved to us that Ben Johnson is unpredictable when it comes to who he profiles and who he targets in terms of the draft, and Ryan Poles being aligned with him on that. And then we also saw them pull, a rabbit out of their hat with that Joe Tooney trade, with that Jonah Jackson trade. They've shown to be creative to get the guys that they want to fill holes. I'm excited to see what we do on the defensive side of the ball, because that is what needs the biggest shot in the arm right now. And if we can fix that defense, if we can marry it with the offense that we're building off of from last year, we might just be cooking. Ben will be cooking. Caleb will be cooking. And we will reap the benefits of letting Ryan Poles cook. Bear down, baby.